Over the weekend, I got an email from a person it's a school counselor that attended one of my speaking engagements, a couple years ago. And they were in a bit of a pickle. And I don't know, they just wanted somebody to talk to about it. And I get my cell phone number out. I want to be helpful. I really do. And I want to hear about the stories that are going on. I certainly learn a lot just from listening to people. And so picked up the phone, called her. This was Sunday afternoon, and we ended up talking for about an hour about a lawsuit that she was involved in and the issues that the district was having to deal with over a individual education plan for a student. And unfortunately, I can't get into the particulars of that story. It's an ongoing lawsuit. I want to protect the anonymity of the counselor and let them kind of deal with the litigation first, and then maybe we could talk about that story down the road. But it did get me thinking. It did get me thinking about, I've been very high level in a lot of these podcasts. I've been very, I've talked about the systemic long-term effects of the school theater, which we're calling school choice, right? And the negative impact it will have on kids. And I was like, wow, this story is so telling to me, and it's so moving to me because I think the parents are trying to do the right thing. The school's trying to do the right thing. Unfortunately, the bureaucracy and the lawyers get involved. And I don't know if anyone knows what the right thing to do is anymore. Instead, what they're doing is they're trying to play CYA, cover your tushy, right? And I get it. I mean, I practiced law for a long time. I was a litigator, and I know what happens when lawyers touch things. Lawyers want a lawyer. Surgeons want to do surgery. Carpenters want to, cut wood. I mean, it's the job of a lawyer. It's the job of a lawyer to litigate, and so once they get involved, I don't know how that benefits the child. But today, I do want to get uncomfortably real about something that I don't think enough of us are talking about out loud, which is when we talk about fixing schools, right? We love to talk about big ideas and choice and accountability and new programs and new labels and whatever propaganda is being dumped on us at the time. And it really has become school theater. I mean, like many, many things in the world of social media and, everything's got to get clickbait and all that stuff. So, but meanwhile, inside of like the actual school buildings, special education teams are like, they're trying to do the human thing for kids while also living under a legal reality, really a microscope, right? Where one decision can become a multi-year lawsuit. And so then it begins, are they working on educating the kids, or are they working on trying to protect themselves from liability or the district from liability? I mean, it's a really tough situation. And like we're dealing with this in Tennessee right now where, like many school boards around the nation, the state wants to try to talk about taking them over. And it's like, without getting the facts of whether or not the state should take over a district or not take over a district, the dark cloud looming over Shelby County School District means it's hard for the leaders, the superintendent, the school board, the chief of staff to think about much else besides the legal ramifications of a takeover. Are they educating the children, or are they worried about a takeover? And you could say, well, they're supposed to be, educating the children. Yeah. But the legislatures and the lawyers won't allow them to do that. And as much as we'd like to think that people can compartmentalize that well, lawsuits take time out of the day. So you cannot be productive on growing and educating and doing all the things right for children if you're muxed up in depositions and legal fights. It's just, there's just not enough time in the day to really focus individually on all the right things. And so here in Shelby County, this looming threat of takeover is just destroying the schools and destroying the children slowly over time. And it's like, fine, I'll get into particulars of that if people really want me to. And I'm not going to suggest if it's the right thing or the wrong thing, but I do know this. Where are the deliberate leaders? If you're going to take them over, shut up and take them over. God bless. The looming cloud of indecision that it is above the schools doesn't help the children. Either do it or don't do it, but let's get on with taking care of the kids. Okay. So I know I get a little worked up. You've met me. I get a little worked up, right? So in this episode, I'm going to anchor everything in public cases, public lawsuits, and the actual official findings, because I want the facts to do the talking. And I'll say this pretty plainly because, it's me. I'm not attacking parents who fight for their children. I think that's awesome. In a lot of cases, families feel like the system gives them only one lever that works. You go and you plead, you beg, you talk to the teachers, to the principals, maybe show up at the school board, and you're not getting what you believe your child needs. And the only thing you have left is a potential lawsuit, right? And so it's not the parents that are advocating or the staff advocating. I think that everybody, it's America, you should advocate for what you believe in. What I am attacking is the situation that we have created, where schools are forced to choose between service and survival, right? And I'm going to walk you through a few public stories that show exactly like how this happens, all right? All right, so let's dig in, right? So I think about meetings a lot and how a lawsuit can just be nothing but endless meetings, and how it takes away from the time to do anything else. You're just in meetings with lawyers and just, oh my gosh, like your lawyers, their lawyers, judges. So let's start in Illinois with a case that reads like the exact scenario that counselor described to me. All right. It's pretty close. A child, it's funny. I say a kid, but some people are going to get mad because a kid's like a goat, not a child. But anyway, a kid needs support. The district is already overwhelmed. And suddenly the room isn't about service, it's about legal exposure. So let's assume that the average amount of money a district gets for a student to educate that child for the year is about $14,000. It's more or less in some districts, right? But the average is $14,000, just over that. And that takes the people spending that money on the child, right? That money should go towards computers and classroom instructors and the front staff to help coordinate everything, and buses to get the child to and from, like the things that actually help a child get to school, show up to school, be present, get fed, and then like get the education, right? Okay. So, but once a lawsuit's introduced, then resources start to go towards a lawsuit, all right? And say, okay, in Illinois, according to the Tri-State Public Radio, this was in 2023, Galesburg Community Unit School District, I'm just going to call it Galesburg, it created an IEP for a child who was in first grade, so a little one. And it called for placement in a segregated therapeutic day school more than an hour away. Ooh, that feels tough to me, right? It's saying the child showed aggressive behaviors and posed a safety threat. Now, safety threats mean, you're not just worried about the child that you're trying to take care of. You're worried about the child that they could actually harm, or the parents they could harm. And you think, first graders pretty little, but first graders with a temper and in some cases, they're finding things to use as weapons, and they're stabbing. I mean, it can get really bad for everybody around them. And what they need is help. What they need is assistance, right? So that ultimately we can create the best adult out of that child that's possible, right? Like, I think that's what the mission is, right? So the child's aggressive. And I guess in this case, the only public service was an hour away. And no parent wants their child segregated. Right? I don't want my child segregated. I was segregated as a child. I had to go to, what I had to do? I had to go to 2 different learning disabled classes when I was like in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade, I think, 6th grade. And it was a little embarrassing. It was embarrassing, man, because like you'd go to homeroom in like 5th grade. And, this is when we just started, like, you weren't in the same classroom all day, or actually it happened to be even when I was in the classroom all day. Like at some points during the day, somebody would come by and be like, Brian, little Johnny, they take like 2 or 3 of us, and they would take us down the hallway, and we'd walk out, and we have to go and sit in, they had those, this was in Florida. We had those little rooms that were set up outside. They looked like cargo containers, and they were on like concrete blocks. And so we had to go to these little outbuildings, and that's where we get, like talking good courses. And I didn't have to go for math, but I had to go for, speech certainly. And I was way behind on, was it reading? Yeah, I think it was reading. Like I couldn't read good or anything. And I do want to kind of think about this in terms of like, what would have happened to me without those programs if they didn't have it on site and they couldn't pull me out and give me the extra attention I needed. I don't know where I'd be. I don't think I'd be writing books and talking to you on this podcast. That's for sure. I think though that if I had to go an hour away to a segregated therapeutic day school to get my education, my mom would have had a fit, and she didn't have, resources to sue and everything, but she was a fierce mama bear, right? And she would have had a fit. So I get it. Those parents are upset by that. Like that seems bad. And, then we're looking for somebody to blame in this case, right? Like who do we blame for this? Well, the blame is not on the school district. It's certainly not on the teachers. It's certainly not on the faculty, the superintendent, school board. It's not on them. It's the taxpayers that we should blame. It's the taxpayers. So like, we can't sue the taxpayers. We have to sue a government entity in this case, right? And the government entity had the resources over years and years and years taken away from them. So now the only resource available is an hour away. So not the fault of the school district, but certainly they're the ones left cleaning up the mess, right? So the parents, rightly so in this case, in Galesburg, objected and requested a due process hearing, arguing that the placement was unnecessarily restrictive and it separated the child from their non-disabled peers, and nobody wants anybody segregated. And the administrative hearing officer sided with the district. This was in April of 24, saying it wasn't possible to provide additional supports in a local school. So now we're not over here. Now, so we have layers. If you're not familiar with the court system, you got kind of these administrative tribunals in some situations, and then you kind of keep ratcheting it all the way up, potentially to the state Supreme Court or the national Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. You're not always going to get that far, but you certainly have a couple appeals, right? So you can predict the parents appealed this administrative judge's ruling, right? And I think the judge was right, but it still doesn't make it equitable, fair, and it still doesn't make the child not segregated. The administrative hearing officer just said, well, there's nothing closer. There's nothing local. So what are you going to do, right? So the case got escalated. Of course, it got appealed. And in July of 2024, the parents filed a federal lawsuit now. So before there was a due process hearing, now they're actually filing a federal lawsuit. Big deal, big money, like in lawyers' fees and costs and things. And it alleged that the plan to place the child at this is a high road school in Peoria, Illinois, violated the IDEA, right? Which is remember, you've got all these laws that public schools have got to comply with, right? So you have the Americans with Disabilities Act, you have discrimination laws, you have religious discrimination laws, racial discrimination laws, right? You have all these different laws. So without digging into the law around the IDEA, just know that it is a mandate by Congress at the federal level that says we cannot be discriminatory. Now, we're not going to give you any resources, schools, to make sure you're not discriminatory. And that's just a Brian Stevens thought. But I think it's true. We're just going to make you do it, and people are going to sue you and take money from you if you don't get it. Tough tards, like tough work, right? Okay. So the basic premise in the IDEA is that the child should be educated in the least restrictive environment possible, the least restrictive, which is clearly not an hour away, but okay. So what happened, right? So in December of 2024, a federal judge ruled for the parents now, finding that an individual education plan violated the IDEA law and ordered the districts to create a new IEP that would let the child remain in a school, including accommodations like a one-on-one paraprofessional. Who's going to pay for that? Because it's not going to be the federal government. They're not going to send more money down to this public school to get them a paraprofessional one-on-one. They're not going to do it. So where's this money going to come from? Like, I mean, I hate goals that are like unrealistic, impractical, and there's no resources that align with it, which is one of the things I get really bummed out about with the way the federal Department of Education is doing their job. They're supposed to have all these mandates, but they don't have necessarily funding sources attached to those. So how are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? It's like saying, I want you to drive cross country, but I'm not going to give you a car and I'm not going to give you money for fuel, but good luck to you. All right. So here's where the flavor really hits in all this, is the part that people don't picture when they say, just do what's right. Well, how are they going to pay for what's right? And in August of 2025, the same judge ordered the district to pay roughly $248,000 in legal expenses. Now, I did the math on that. That's around $475 an hour per attorney, $475 per hour for these attorneys that represented the parents. 516 hours of legal work is what they submitted that they did. And who's got to pay for that? Well, the district's got to pay for that. The taxpayers via the district are going to pay for that. But let's do the math. Let's keep doing the math. So if the average district gets $14,000 a student, right? That means they need that $14,000 to educate the children. But right now, because of those legal fees, 17.5 children in that district receive goose egg, nothing to educate them. That's not exactly the way it works, but you see where I'm getting. 14,000 times 17 students is about what they paid in legal fees. So that now means that all the kids in the district, all of them receive a reduced education because of legal fees. It might only be 0.1% or 0.25%, but all these things start to add up. So how is a district supposed to educate all the kids when they continue to lose money to pay legal fees and to do a one-on-one paraprofessional for this one student? I mean, what's that? 70,000, somewhere between $40,000 to $70,000 a year. I don't know what they pay a paraprofessional in Illinois, but I mean, it's a full-time job. It's a one-on-one paraprofessional. It's not a 1-on-12 or a 1-on-20. So it's going to cost money. And the district tried to protect their tax dollars and said, hey, this fee seemed really excessive. That's kind of a normal thing when you're charged attorney's fees, is to go, wait. That seems like a lot. That seems a lot for a case. And I love that in their brief, they wrote this, the public schools request for reduction in fees, saying it was baffled because the case moved with, quote, uncommon efficiency, which means it went really fast, but they still billed more than 500 hours. This is one of the reasons why I decided to get out of law was, God bless, that just like anything else, the desperate need for partners in law firms, at least that I worked out, to thrust upon the associates to bill more hours, because that's how we earn money, even if it wasn't needed, right? And trust me, it's real. I saw it, and it's why I left the formal practice of the law. And yes, I still have my law license. I always get people, because you lost your law license, Brian. No, I'm still practicing a lawyer. I'm licensed attorney, some practice. And it's just these hourly rates now are being charged to the taxpayers. Okay, so let me keep going. This gets me so frazzled, I think, sometimes. So in the real world of school governance, the superintendent in this case said the district's liability insurer was covering the expenses up to a limit. But the school district's paying out of pocket for the rest of it. And they're also paying for the insurance, by the way, which is their insurance premium is going to go up. So the district appealed this in December of 2024, all the way up to the 7th Circuit, which is, like there are, 11, 12 circuits? I forget, 11 circuits across the United States. the federal appellate courts, and then the next step above that is the Supreme Court. So this is the step right below the Supreme Court. So it's a big deal, right? And the oral arguments, they went up there to fight about these attorney's fees, which, by the way, everyone's still billing more attorney's fees. And so haven't gotten a ruling on that one as of yet, like what happened with their attorney's fees. But know this isn't one meeting. This isn't one like, hey, we're upset with IEP. We're going to defend our child and we're going to fight for this. It's years of disputes, filing, staffing debates, documentation, legal strategy. And the counselor I was talking to yesterday said that she would be in a meeting with 20 plus people for a couple hours, a couple times a month, outside of like little phone calls, a couple times a month in legal strategy meetings and prepping for this. And it's not like the district has a choice. They have to have everybody there so they can, dot every I, cross every T, and make sure that everything complies with the law. And so it's the bureaucracy that has taken away resources from children, which is, I get why people are so excited potentially about, this school choice, school theater thing. And they go, well, they can be flexible. They don't have the levels of bureaucracy. Right. But they will one day. Bureaucracies grow or they die, right? And we cannot afford for the bureaucracy of public schools to go away. We can't afford it. So what we need to do is free them up. I'm not talking about from legal requirements. I'm talking about the signing in triplicate of everything. I'm talking about filling out more paperwork to send to the federal government on testing requirements and actually teaching kids to be critical thinking. Let's have another story. And this one was in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And the Center for Children's Advocacy basically, and this was in October of 2025, filed a complaint showing findings that the school district failed to implement students' IEPs due to staffing shortages, especially in certain self-contained like special education classrooms. And it investigated several students, and it found them to be very similarly situated, and that the state ultimately concluded that the district was out of compliance for each of those students, and it owed compensatory services to those families. And the state also determined additional similarly situated students were owed compensatory services also. And so what does this mean? It means that the district couldn't hire the right people. And it either, there's a lot of reasons why you can't hire great people. Maybe the income that you're offering, that the salary you're offering that person's not enough. Well, certainly we know that public schools have that problem, right? Because we don't give them enough to pay everybody, really well for taking care of our children and our future, right? Yeah, that's me being a bit sarcastic, right? All right. So it could be that the job is just not enjoyable, and it's wrecked with problems and bureaucracy and headaches and tension and stress. And who needs it? Like, a lot of people will take less money for peace, right? Or because they believe that they get to do the right thing and actually provide services to people, right? And so in this case, they said that they have 24 vacancies and for special education teachers, 46 vacancies for paraeducators. And so what do you want the district to do, right? So now the state started to require 330 additional service hours for each student. It also required a plan for 32.75 hours of IEP required speech and language services for that same student. Now, I get that. That sounds cool. Like, clearly these students need those services and those helps, but where's the district going to find these people? Where are they going to get the money to pay these people? The state findings even addressed mobility, that if a student transferred anywhere within Connecticut, the district that student transfers to must attempt to contact the parent to offer arrangements for missed services, document whether parents consent or decline, and be ready to describe its efforts if it can reach them. Man, that's a lot of paperwork, right? So if they're filling out, if you're filling out paperwork You're not educating the child. Now, I'm not saying that paperwork's not important. It is. But at what point does it become overly burdensome to require them to? The students left the school district. Now, I, as the education person, I've got to try to find them, either get their consent or their decline, or be ready to describe my efforts in my attempt to reach them. Now, how many efforts is a court going to be all right with? One, if I make one phone call, if I make one email, if I do one text. Do I have to do all three? Do I have to do it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? I'm telling you, this is the way the courts break it down. It's funny. If you want legal service on a person and you can't find them, you can stick an ad in the paper. But you have to show that you attempted to reach them in various ways of known locations. But if not, you can ultimately just stick it in the paper. I don't know who reads the paper, but that can justify service if you've exhausted other means. But here's the issue. What's exhausting me? How many days, hours must this professional, this teacher use to try to find and locate the parents and get permission? How many hours do they have to take away from doing their actual job so they can fill out paperwork? It drives me crazy that no one gave a guidance on, look, you've got to try to reach them via email once, via text message once, and one phone call. At least that's trainable, and they can document that they did that, and they can do that. But don't require them to do their best. If they do their best trying to find these families that have moved, they won't be doing their best for the students that are in class right now. There's limited resources out there, guys. And this reminds me of an axiom in the military is that an army, it's a Rome axiom, I think, is that an army travels on its stomach. And what that means is a unit, wherever you go in life, you have to make sure you have the resources to get there. And then once you hit ground, whatever location you have to have the resources to do well when you get there, right? So how can we do well for the kids there if they're having to document 35 times that they try to find these people? Anyway, so the reality is that when staffing collapses, services collapse. And then the fix becomes, complicated. And then the legal system gets in, and that becomes a self-fulfilling vicious cycle, the circular cycle of more and more resources being taken away and drained from actually educating the children through no fault of anyone's other than the taxpayers. And I blame us. I blame us as taxpayers because I don't think that we really understood the ramifications of this. We didn't see the big picture. And that's why we got to continue to spread, the gospel of all this. We've got to let people know what's going on. I think I probably covered enough stories today. I have a few more. Maybe I'll get into them later. But so I guess here's my challenge, right? Especially for anyone who wants to talk about big school reform, right? We need to fix it. We need to get out there and improve it. Always. Like, I think that's the important part about life is, but before we start talking about new solutions, ask your local district a few questions, right? What can we do to help? What can we do to help raise funds or to support our teachers and peer educators so that they will show up and be supported and want to continue to work on our district? It's everyone's responsibility to create a great culture for the people educating our children, right? What are we doing to help support these people, right? And matter of fact, I'm just going to leave us with that because I think it's everyone's responsibility, because the cost of lawsuits and bureaucracy really comes at the expense of the time we have to educate our children. So let's think about that and let's figure out how we can tighten things up a little bit, maybe streamline these legal processes so that everyone gets their day, but it doesn't dictate in gazillion hours. Let's just kind of go from there. All right. Hope these stories help. Let's keep up the fight. All right. Thanks. Bye.